Well, hello and welcome to some tips for starting Nosework at home with your own dog. The first thing you're going to need is some open boxes, and we're going to use food boxes and blank boxes. So I always label my food boxes so that I know which one is the food, and I'm going to keep food boxes separate from non-food boxes so that they don't get cross-contaminated. But I wanted to mention, if you label your food boxes with a magic marker, make sure that some of your clean or non-food boxes have some kind of magic marker scribble on it also, because the dogs are so smart and such good sniffers that if we only have magic marker and food together, they may think, oh, I need to search for the smell of food and magic marker. So we don't want them to think that. So by adding some other marks, just some scribbles, on the clean boxes or the non-food boxes, that way it's called proofing the dog off of that particular odor. So to begin with, you need just a couple of food boxes and a few more open, clean boxes. If we were in class, the student would come out with the dog on a leash, and I would manage the boxes. But at home, you can either put your dog up in another room or a crate or behind an X-pen or something, and run them on or off leash, whatever works better for you. But to start with, it's a simple, and especially if you have a smaller dog or a dog that might be a little fearful of even approaching a box. I do have some that are very low to the ground. And I have a treat bag because it's just easier to be able to grab treats like that to reload the box. So I would put one box that has food in it, and I would take just maybe 3 other boxes that do not have food, just in a miscellaneous pattern, or kind of a small search area, and you want it to be in the center of a room so that at first we search in an open area. We want to make it as easy for the dog as possible to begin with, and we want the dog to not be afraid or distracted by anything. So we start in an open area, but very quickly we start moving the search area around to make it bigger, to start working against walls or in corners, and it just escalates from there. But so this would be the setup. The dog would come in. We move at the dog's pace. So if you have a happy, bouncy dog that loves to check stuff out anyway, they may come right in and check those boxes and find the food and self-reward. They're going to eat the food. And you can even reward them a little more just by saying, oh, good dog, oh, good dog. But don't make a great big deal of it because they did the work and they got the reward. If your dog is hesitant to enter the search area because it looks a little weird and they're not used to it, this is where being on leash is a little bit better because you can take a step with your dog. But even if they're not on leash, the dogs respond a lot to our bodies and the positioning of our bodies in the environment. So if you needed to, you could take a step or two into the search area and encourage your dog to follow you, and then you just wait. We're not going to point out the food box to them. We're not going to lead them right to the food box. It's the aha moment that it won't happen their first search or their second search, but pretty soon they're going to figure out, oh man, that box paid me some food and I didn't even have to do anything except go up to it. So we want them to be in charge of the search. We control the environment, but the dog controls the search. All right, I recommend that the first time you have your dog out, you do that 3 times, where you have one box with food and 3 or 4 other non-food boxes around. The dog comes in, eventually finds the food and self-rewards, and if the dog's not on leash, it's almost like playing a little shell game where you pick up a couple other boxes and you've reloaded with food. Don't forget to put food in the food box. and then the dog's watching you, or maybe the dog's not watching you, and that's fine too. But then you put it back down and you move the food box just a little bit differently. Let the dog search again, find the food. You would pick up the empty box, pick up a couple other boxes, move the search area just a little bit. We'll go a little closer to this wall, like that. Put the food box there, bring the dog back in, let him search. And then I say after 3 times, go ahead and actually put the dog up, whether that's in the bathroom or another room or in a crate or something like that, so that they have a minute to mentally digest what just happened. And it's really something, even after just doing 3 runs and giving them a chance to go back and think about it, the next time they come out, you'll see more interest. For the most part, most dogs will be a little more interested in checking boxes than they were before. So I would probably do 2 runs of, well, that's 3, a run of bringing them in 3 different times to search for a food box. And then after the second time, I would go ahead and add a second food box. And by the way, if you can get different shapes and sizes of open boxes, it's a great thing to help your dog get used to approaching weird shaped boxes and things like that. There's so many things about Nosework that, as an aside, you know, it can help a sensitive dog that's sort of scared of their environment to build confidence. And something as simple as different kind of boxes. A box that has a flap that maybe they haven't seen before is something new for them to approach. So even from the very beginning, from day 1, we can see some of the other advantages of Nosework besides the primary one, which is for the dog to have a good time and to hunt and to be in charge of the hunt, and we're observing their behavior. So anyway, by the time you did your 3rd run, I would put 2 food boxes down. I would start to make the search area a little bit bigger. So maybe we put a food box here, sort of near the one end of the search area, and then use that one. And then I might bring in an extra 1 or 2 clean boxes. Also, I'm moving them closer to this wall, just because, and closer to an object. Here's a pole. At first, we want nothing in the search area so that there's nothing to distract them. But over time, we start expanding and getting them used to, like in this case, they're going to have to get close to that wall to self-reward with the food. So then, this is what it would look like for your 3rd. So you've done 3 one time, 3 a second time, and now you're going to run a set of 3 with 2. There, with 2 food boxes. So you bring the dog in, and they hit 1 time, and they self-reward, and that's great. And then you should pick the food box up so they don't keep going back to an empty food box, because as you can tell, very shortly after you start using these, they start picking up all kinds of crumbs and food smells and everything. So I would pick that one up, and then if the dog's looking at you or doesn't know what to do, again, you could just step into the search area, and you don't want to move around a lot, but you don't necessarily, if they're not quite sure what to do, sometimes you just do a little motion like that, a step or 2, and turning into them. And you know, if we're facing the dog like this and then we turn like this, a lot of times the dog will turn and kind of look in the direction that we're going. Because I think, oh, what does mom know that I don't know? So run that with 2. And that would actually be enough. That's plenty for your first lesson. So here's some thoughts on how the game progresses and how the classes progress after we've already done some easy open box searches kind of in an open area. You would start, I'm going to use an even bigger search area. Once they're pretty good about going in and checking boxes, because they know boxes pay, we can start doing things like slightly elevating the food box. And maybe elevating a food box and putting it next to a wall. So it gives a slightly different picture, a slightly different scent picture, because now the dog has to make sure their nose is up off the ground and they're looking a little bit higher. Because over time, we will elevate some hides, starting low, but eventually working pretty darn high. We could also take a food box and really start making this a bigger search area. Now I'm all the way to the door. All right, so sometimes dogs can be a little uncomfortable searching in a corner or against the wall. So that's one of the things you're going to start working on, is putting food boxes in a corner or against the wall, as well as elevating them. Over time, you can elevate them even higher. We could do, again, depending on the kind of box you have and what you have to elevate it, and also how tall is your dog. You could do something like that and put the food there. Now they've really got to start bringing their nose up a little. And it's really something to see. They recognize box, so it tends to be a fairly easy transition to get them to start working a little of elevation like that. And just so you know, the next step, we usually do about 3 classes. Those are 1-hour classes, and each dog's probably running maybe 15 minutes, a total of 15 minutes throughout that hour. And those first 3 classes pretty much are just boxes. But then the next thing that we start to do is to we start to put some objects in the search area, and you should do that while you're still just working boxes with your dog. You know, put a chair, put a table, because it just changes the look of the search area and makes them maneuver around things. And if you were working your dog on leash, it makes you as a handler have to practice working around objects while working with your dog. But the next steps in the process is to have not a food box, because remember, food boxes have all those smells and in there. But say you wanted to, what I would do in a run that would start this is I would have one food box. So it's like, oh yeah, I know that. But then I would put my other food boxes away. And I would take a clean box, this is a box that has not had food in it, and I would put it right next to an object. And then I would put the food on the object. And this is another time where once the dog figures this out, they get that aha moment, and it's just great. The dog comes in, and they probably find this food box first, and self-reward, and you'd pick that box up, and then you would just support them by standing in the search area, making occasional eye contact, but don't be chattering with them all the time. The dog's working, and the dog's thinking, and they're interpreting the smells that are coming in. So you want to, it's okay if your dog gets a little nervous to go, you're fine, everything's okay. But you don't have to keep going, search, come on, let's go, search, you're doing great, yeah. Don't have constant chatter with your dog while they're searching in the area. So the dog will probably come check this box, because they know boxes pay, and at that point they're probably going to catch the odor of the hide, and they're going, wait, it's not in the box, it's not in that box. And then all of a sudden, their nose will come up and they'll be, oh my gosh, an object pays, a chair pays. And it's the coolest thing. And then that's how you start introducing hiding stuff on objects in the environment. And then it's just a steady stream of going outside and now taking our boxes outside and working on, first on concrete or asphalt and then on grass. And then repeating that same thing where we have objects as well as boxes outside. The other 2 elements are vehicles. Vehicles will be a separate discussion. And then ultimately we close boxes. Once the dog gets on odor, as opposed to just being on food, there are closed boxes that have Q-tips that are taped to the top of the box, and the dog has to be able to, just using that little bit of odor that's coming out the seams, to be able to catch that odor and tell you which container it's in. So that's also a more advanced thing that you don't necessarily ever have to go to. You can keep your dog searching for food and food only for your entire Nosework career. You wouldn't be able to trial, to compete at different trials, but if your goal is for your dog to have a job and for you guys to do something really fun together, you can do that with food. And the way to make your food boxes a little more challenging while still staying on food is to have the food in there, but have like either a flap that can be partially closed, or you have the boxes with the 4 flaps, maybe you'll close a couple of those flaps and leave a couple open, and watch your dog work to be able to get to that food. So that's it for now. That's a great way to start. If you have any questions, you can go to my website, dogtalkwithjulie.com. There's a place to contact me. Thank you for your time and your interest in Nosework.